It's the young kid, BB gun, shoot the can, skate away. See on my jersey, feeling like Conway. Go ahead and steal my style, you won't make it a mile. And that powder in your nose is stepped on like some tile. Yeah. Humble as a rookie, I'ma be here for a while. I work real hard to get where I'm at now. I think my mama proud, I'm just tearing roofs down. No gimmicks, no limits, 100 authentic. Yeah. I look.
Hey, welcome to episode 2 of the King Sportscast. Welcome back, listeners, and if you're new, welcome to the King Sportscast. We're real sports talk. We'll have anywhere from just issues on the field and off the field, polls, any interactive stuff. It's going to be pretty sweet, and we're really appreciating the support we've gotten so far. We've gotten a lot of good feedback, and we want to keep providing good content for you guys. So we're going to dive right into it today with... I know a lot of our listeners are probably just dying at the teeth with this rivalry weekend. I know Wayne was excited too. We're usually pro football guys, but we're really into the college football this weekend. What about you, Wayne?
Yeah, man. What's up, guys? Glad to be back on for the episode 2. I had the privilege of being back home, back in my hometown, staying at my mom's house for the holiday. So it was football all weekend long, and it was awesome having the Thursday games on. We had 5 days of straight football, and not just any football. It was, like you said, it was the rivalry, and that's always fun to see. Even whenever teams come in and maybe one's really high ranked and the other one's not so much, it's still got a little chip on their shoulder for the underdog in the game, and it's always fun to see these guys go out there and. That's the good part about college. They're not playing for a check, so they're basically just playing for a pride and maybe a spot to play in a bowl game at this point.
Gotta love it
if that's the case. Yeah, so it's awesome to see a lot of good games. I mean, I'm an SEC fan, and the A&M and the LSU game was probably one of the coolest games I've ever watched personally on TV. As far as like all the OTs, all the offense that's scored, because you don't ever get that in the SEC games. You don't get that much offense normally, and I love watching LSU play. I think they're a really good team. They've stumbled a couple times, but their head coach has them in the Coach O. He's got them in the right spot, and they'll be good for a couple years to come.
Yeah, man. I mean, an instant classic. I think I slept through a couple of OTs. I mean, I definitely tried to watch the whole thing, but my attention span's pretty short. I know some of you understand that, but I think Ed Oregon is a perfect coach for LSU. I mean, he is the Raging Cajun. I mean, I don't even care if they go 9-3 or 10-3. Like, I feel like he's just the right person there, and he's definitely gonna do better than that coming in the future. And I think the SEC, especially Texas A&M's always kind of been more of an offensive shootout team because they came from the Big 12. So if you were going to get a type of game like this, it's definitely with that team in it. I think like them in Missouri, it would be Missouri wouldn't be another one. I wouldn't be surprised, but definitely an awesome game. I mean, the whole rivalry week. I mean, I just want to forget the rivalry week for me personally with Florida State. They just need to fire Taggart. They need to clean house because we can't have losing seasons. We just don't do losing seasons at Florida State.
Yeah, so going back to the high OT game, could you imagine if this is all hypothetical, but if the Kansas City and the Rams game we saw a couple of weeks ago, could you imagine if that game, the OT, they went into OT 1 and then the OT was set up like college football? I think if they're trying to get more stats out there, protect the players more, all that good stuff, and have fans more excited about the games. I don't think it's that bad of an idea to switch it. A lot of people would be, completely against it, but I think it would be cool to see, which I'm not out there and I don't have to play a game the next following week, which, those games can get long like we've seen the other night, but I think it would be pretty cool to see. What are your thoughts on that
one? I don't know. It's kind of a stretch, I think. I think with college, I feel like it's so much more. There's so much more space to work with. So, with like you're gonna have those back to back, which in the pros, I think it actually would probably end quicker. So I feel like it's harder to score in the red zone in the pros than it is in college. Just the windows aren't there.
If you're the Atlanta Falcons, it's definitely harder to score in the pros than it is.
I mean,
in the red
I
zone.
feel like I could throw more touchdowns to Julio Jones than Matt Ryan. I just don't understand. He's literally been the top 3 in argument best receiver for who knows how long, and he can't catch touchdowns. It's mind numbing to me. I don't know, but yeah, awesome game. I think another game I think people are a little more surprised about. I think we were all really excited. I was actually looking forward to hopefully getting one of those old Michigan-Ohio State games. Like, I remember they had a classic, I think, when Ohio State went to the national championship, and it was like 39-36, and it was probably I think I downloaded it on my iPod in high school and watched it over and over again. Those are some of the best rivalries in football, if not in all of football. So it was kind of depressing seeing Michigan just, bend over like that. It was pretty sad.
They had a chance to go to the to the playoff, and they supposedly had a top ranked defense. I think
They were the
3
number
ranked
1 in the
defense.
nation, I think, going into the game, from what I heard on a broadcast. Don't quote me on it.
Yeah, so you put that into perspective, and then Ohio State hung what 59 on them, or maybe even I stopped watching once they got into the 50s, but they hung a lot of points on them. So who's to say that Michigan wouldn't have went into the playoff and got their ass beat? It's kind of hard to tell, but I don't understand how how Harbaugh takes his guys into that game and gets busted like that. Like, they had to be very underprepared, and he just got out coached, like, plain and simple. If you just watch the game and just watched how Ohio State was just manipulating that defense up and down the field. There's a couple turnovers. There was a couple, I think, special teams plays too that put them in position, but still there were some long runs. There were some long, deep passes. Whenever you're getting beat over the top like that and getting beat with those runs that are 60, 70 yards plus, that just goes to show you didn't show up to play. So, good job on Ohio State, but they basically just screwed the Big Ten out of getting someone into the playoff game. I think you open up that spot for maybe like a Georgia or Notre Dame to sneak in, or even Oklahoma with Kyler Murray. But we'll talk more about him when we break down the Heisman race.
Yeah, for me, I it's like Harbaugh's 0-4 now against Ohio State. Like, I think for whatever reason, even without winning a national title, he kind of got like that he got that Nick Saban, like, upper echelon coach treatment. Like, maybe not Saban, obviously Saban's a god, but like like he was in the top 5 coaches in the nation, or a lot of people would say that. And at this point, it's like, is he not on that untouchable level, or is he still just John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh? Like, I don't.
Honestly, I think from his perspective, if he were to get fired,
He
within
gets
the
the
next
payout,
week,
though. It doesn't matter.
he gets a payout and he gets a job in the NFL, because he left on decent terms as far as like having a good record, things like that. He had the 49ers where you wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
Things fell apart with him and the GM, so the GM and himself are no longer there. So those guys, as far as like NFL owners, they're looking at him, and if he gets fired, I think he's going to be coaching an NFL team.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I don't have any doubts about that. I wasn't saying that he's going to be out of a job and not be able to coach again. He's way too young and enthusiastic to not easily land any other college job, even as bad as he plays for Michigan. And no doubt he'll go to the pros and do the same thing. Like, him having the job he'll always have a job. He's like NFL royalty at this point, or football royalty.
And that's what's kind of holding Michigan back from firing him. They know that he's wanted still, so it's not like a situation
But they are better,
Tom.
though, even though they got kicked. Like, they got their dicks kicked, but
They're getting
they were in the hunt. Like, if you were gonna say where Michigan was in this like stretch between, I can't even tell you when they were that, like, they could beat Ohio State, but they've had just a tough stretch of like mediocrity. Like, I think they had that one lineman coach who really wasn't a big enough coach to be a Michigan job. Like, I don't even remember his name because he was so insignificant. but he was going 6-6 at Michigan, which is, in my opinion, Michigan is, I think, number 1 or 2 in wins all time. I think they're number 1. So, like, if I'm Michigan, I'm not putting up with 6-6, and at least Harbaugh keeps you out of that. So I don't think you fire him, because I'd much rather be the second best team in the Big Ten than be the laughing stock, because Northwestern can be bad, and their football team's not going to get affected. The same amount of fans will probably go if they're winning or not. But Michigan, it matters. It matters to win. Like, you can't. It's like the Yankees or the Lakers. You need them to win they need to be relevant in college football. Like, it's important for college football. So it's just tough. Like, who are you going to get that's going to match Jim Harbaugh? I don't think you get anyone. So
yeah,
there's
not
it's a rock and a hard
names
place.
out
I
there.
completely agree with you.
Sure. So yeah, it's tough, but I don't think they should freak out and fire him. There comes a time where you got to realize where your program's at and the level of opportunity there. I mean, they're getting top ranked draft classes in there each year.
I
As
think
far as
Nike
recruitment
signed
goes.
with them as their new apparel, and their apparel's sick. Like, the new Michigan gear is sick.
Is it? Yeah, I thought it was Jordan, but yeah, I think
Or it's
they did
Jordan.
switch.
Well, yeah, it's
Yeah.
Jordan, but Nike affiliate. Like, basically that brand. I think especially Jordan, like seeing the Jordan collabs that they have, like it's cool as fuck.
But yeah, so I mean, what level of opportunity is there past playing for a playoff spot, which basically is what they were doing in this past weekend. They were playing for a playoff spot. So where's the opportunity past that? I don't think they're ever going to be like a Nick Saban with Bama, Roll Tide, running through everybody in the playoffs. So just I think if you stay where you're at, you have good good recruitment classes coming in. Just keep rolling that way, and hopefully you make it to the playoffs at some point, because Harbaugh can get you there. He can get you into the playoff, and that's about the cap as far as that goes.
Yeah, and maybe if we held coaches liable to not reporting domestic violence, that he maybe would have won that game, because he definitely got out coached. But
he did.
Maybe he should have just paid one of Urban Meyer's assistants to beat the crap out of their wife, and then have the wife hit him up, because he would just break down, and that whole because he can't out coach
Nothing
him
would be
clearly.
said.
But
Yeah, nothing would be done about it anyway. So, but yeah, and then we're getting toward that part of the season in college football where the Heisman chirping is getting louder and louder. And honestly, to me, I think they should wait and do it completely after the playoffs are played, or at least the first round, because if you have someone like Kyler Murray come in and beat Alabama or beat one of these top tier programs, that looks really good on his Heisman resume, and that can put him over the top in the voting. So I'm not. It's hard for me to say who's the winner right now, or who's the front runner right now, because I mean, if you look at these stats that Tua and Murray have, they're really, really close, really close.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely not like 100%. I think I put on Twitter that I voted for Tua, just because the only stat I see differentiating between them, like I didn't take their rushing stats. I'm sure Kyler Murray probably has more rushing stats than Tua, but he also has more picks. And I think, too, he plays against weaker competition in the Big 12. So I think Tua, too, to step out and be like that person for Alabama, I think he edges a little bit just because they're undefeated. And it's kind of like a team award. It's kind of like the MVP. You kind of get rewarded for winning as well. And I agree, just like the NBA MVP, which I know we'll have mad talks about that this year, it should probably be calculated with because think about it, is James Harden the MVP last year watching through the playoffs? Absolutely not. He wasn't even the best player on his own team.
Yeah, so the problem with that is the award in the NBA, they say that the MVP is a regular season award, so they'd have to change it to actually include the postseason. So it's something that they would have to completely change as far as like the voting goes.
I guess it would mess up with history because they've probably been holding the same precedent for 40 or 50 years. I guess just my thought process is, in the NBA and then in some schedules in college football, like, you might play weaker opponents, or like, the in the NBA you can clearly tell if you understand basketball or can tell the speed of the game or the toughness, like they step it up in the playoffs like a decent level. I mean there's definitely it's a different product. So are you really the MVP if you're beating average defenses, but you're putting up 8 points as the NBA MVP in closeout games, or like missing, I think he missed threes for 3 or 4 straight games. Like, it was unbelievable. I mean, this man is literally unstoppable in the regular season, and he's like DeMar DeRozan in the playoffs. It's unbelievable to me. Like, sure, maybe not to that extent, because he's been like historically bad, but I mean, we expect more from James Harden.
Yeah, and I agree. Actually, a couple of years ago, whenever the MVP race was between Harden and Steph Curry, and Steph Curry actually ended up winning the MVP that year, and that was before they had Durant, all that good stuff. So that was when Curry was coming off back-to-back, or he got his back-to-back MVP. That was his second year. I actually agree completely that I think it should be an entirety as far as the MVP race goes, and include the postseason. The only thing you can say back to that from the other end is a lot of people are what did you do for me lately kind of people whenever they're talking about voting and stuff like that. So, they're seeing the playoffs happen. We don't know what these guys are game planning around. I mean, obviously, if you're game planning for the Rockets, you're going to try and take James Harden out. When you do that with Golden State, you can't. There's no game plan you can come up with to take out 3 All-Stars. Like, it's just it's impossible to do.
It's all situational. So, but I agree.
Yeah, so it's hard to go back and include that whole, and then you see James Harden struggle, and you take away his whole season basically for it. So,
but I know we got a little sidetracked with the NBA. We always like a good NBA talk, but so I put Tua. So you're just not going to put up a pick for the Heisman?
I think that Tua is going to end up winning it. I just right now
you just 50-50 really.
I like Kyler Murray. I think if he gets some big wins and gets to the championship game, he deserves it because he's had to do more for his team. And if you take Tua away, Hurts steps right in and they keep winning games. If you take Kyler Murray from Oklahoma, they're a 9-4 team. So yeah, that plays a big role for me.
But you could also say with Kyler Murray, he's putting up similar stats to Baker Mayfield, like a little more interceptions, probably better rushing average. But so are you saying are you gonna hold him to product of the system, or is it just because he did it, like he gets his reclaim like Baker did? And Tua, it's like, is he like the X factor? But he has such a great defense every year. There's so much talent on that side of the ball. Does that dim it down? I think this year, maybe like most years, they can just call the Heisman. But I think this year, if they looked into maybe like extending the playoff because of how close the stats are, how close because a lot of people have been calling out the SEC for playing weak schedule out of conference. I mean, I think Alabama played a couple super tune-up games. Like, I'm talking Osceola, Seminole, like New York Jets. I don't even know, like just bad teams that you're about to just get a dub from. And I think as much as we've respected the SEC for their tough schedule, I think they have to hold them just as responsible. But it's the Alabama Invitational until otherwise, and Nick Saban's the god. So
he is. He runs college football right now, and probably will continue until he decides to give it up.
Well, speaking about running in football, Christian McCaffrey yesterday branched to the NFL, but Christian McCaffrey had himself a hell of a fantasy week. I know from your perspective, your list, whoever got him had to take the dub.
Yeah, he had the most fantasy points from any position this entire year for the season. So he did really well as far as receiving and running the ball. He had a few touchdowns in there. Cam Newton's just way better at home than he is on the road. I mean, if you break out the stats, him and Big Ben are comparable when you look at from the home schedule in the home performance and compare it to the road performance. But whenever you get, I mean, he went up against a good defense in Seattle. They're not, they're an above average defense in the NFL, and they're not horrible. So for him to do that against Seattle, they ended up losing the game, but it was really impressive. I'm glad to just see him hold up for as many times as he touches the ball. It's pretty impressive for him to, not have any injuries and things like that at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to, see him produce at a level, especially with running the football. Like, you kind of expect him to get his catches out of the backfield. Like, I think he's probably a top 3 running back out of the backfield. But to see him be able to run the football too is definitely promising. Especially if I'm Cam Newton, I'm just jacked up. Especially because if I'm Cam Newton, the type of quarterback, that I am. I mean, he is their real starting running back. But is to have a quarterback who's maybe not the most accurate, more of the, make a big play type guy, but not as accurate. You got to love having that safety valve as Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's the perfect, talk about what a great draft pick there, especially knowing who Cam is, having that change of pace, guys, because Cam's the power back, right? So you have Christian McCaffrey as the change of pace. It's kind of like a new style offense. I don't think anyone ever imagined that your power back would be your quarterback and then your running back would be your other option on the field most of the time. I think it's definitely a cool niche that we got to see in the NFL. Definitely a cool pairing. We luckily, because sometimes with drafts you don't get cool pairings with players. They just kind of get stuck in places. Like DeAndre Hopkins, right? Don't you wish he now that he has Deshaun Watson, it's super cool. But up to that point, it's wasting talent. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, Christian McCaffrey's a perfect fit. The Panthers' problem, and they're playing for a wild card spot right now because it doesn't look like the Saints are going to let up any for that division, and they're struggling because their home schedule. Talking about how bad Cam can be on the road, they don't have a lot of home games to fluff up that record. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can even make it into the playoffs. But there's enough talent offensively to really do some damage in the playoffs with Cam, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore's coming around. You got old reliable Greg Olsen, but that defense is bad. They're just straight up bad. Russell Wilson was picking them apart. I mean, he was making some really crazy throws, but they were
considered a top tier defense a couple years ago too, which is sad.
Yeah, that's whenever they had Josh Norman, who has completely fallen off as far as being a shutdown corner.
He was always was just a zone system corner who got the ball thrown to him too many times in a year, in my personal opinion.
Sure, yeah, no, I agree, but
he definitely isn't a lockdown corner. He doesn't play in a system that needs him to be it, and he doesn't play it well, so he doesn't need to do it. Why would the Redskins are the NFL organization that loves to get players that don't make sense, pay them when they're older. I mean, that's why they're always 8-8. You're always going to chase those pipe dreams, so don't be chasing no waterfalls. So that's my personal opinion about that. But I'm excited to see Christian, and he's young, and excited. I'm a big Cam fan. I think what he did in college is remarkable. All the off-field stuff he was dealing with, and still just game after game, just being that tank and winning a national title. I think it'd be cool to see him just do that through the pros, and if he won a Super Bowl, it'd be the coolest thing ever, in my opinion. Who knows the outfit he would wear after that game?
No, I like Cam a lot. I think that he struggles to have a good completion percentage a lot of times, and that's not really on him. That's the system. They got to set him up to get some easier passes because this past game I think he only had 5 incompletions, which is really, really good as far as the passer ratings goes. But yeah, he needs a better system. He needs a better offensive coordinator to help them, and he also has to have a better defense because they can, once they get a lead, they should be able to melt that clock with him and Christian McCaffrey holding the ball. But I wanted to ask you something too. So speaking of the playoff race, I mean, we can pretty much say that the Green Bay Packers are completely done at this point. They just got beat to Minnesota. They weren't even close. Aaron Rodgers had a pretty, I guess you would say, average game, especially for his standards. What what do you think is going to happen there? Because they just paid him. I mean, how did they keep justifying McCarthy and him being mediocre as far as that goes?
I have no idea how they've been able to justify McCarthy this long. I mean, he calls the plays, he doesn't call the plays, he calls the plays. I mean, they don't sign anyone. Like, it's like the other day. I mean, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but it's like I saw HaHa Clinton Dix playing on the Redskins, I think, and I'm like, why is he on the Redskins? He's a drafted Packer. Like, the Packers are supposed to be that franchise that you're a Packer for life. Like, that's my idea of a Packer, and I feel like that organization's taken a major hit, especially to players. And I mean, if they're not, I mean, think about this. They've had Aaron Rodgers, who is not the most accomplished quarterback of all time. And that in my eyes means more in the GOAT conversation whenever we have that convo about who's the GOAT in football. And I mean, my listeners know who I'm talking about when I talk about the GOAT. We won't go there. Anyway, to have Aaron Rodgers for that long in his prime and not win more than one Super Bowl, they have a losing record, I think, or like a 500 record in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers since that Super Bowl win. That's just, I'm sorry, like, the man can make every single throw, rolling out both ways. He is the perfect physical specimen for quarterback. And they honestly, the last 3 years, I read this stat, the last 3 years, they've started out 4-6. Like, they've had 6 losses starting out in the first 10, 11 games in 3 years, and they have the best football player physically at the most important position in football. Like, that's a disgrace. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you got to get rid of McCarthy and the front office, in my personal opinion. I mean, maybe I'm jumping the gun with this, but I mean, at least McCarthy. I mean, they don't want to sign anyone. I mean, I think about this, right? They cut Jordy Nelson or cut ties with Jordy Nelson, and Aaron Rodgers didn't even know about it. If LeBron James is on that team, which you could say, LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world. Yes. So he probably, out of most players don't get told about moves. LeBron James gets told about moves probably.
Or makes the move.
Or makes the moves. Probably just controls Magic Johnson by the fucking nutsack. Who knows? But I think that with Rodgers, he's got to be informed, especially when it comes to his receivers. Now, I think it was the right call not signing Jordy Nelson, but they have to do better. And Jimmy Graham, I thought was you tried, but I mean, anyone who knew football knew Jimmy Graham was just getting carried by Drew Brees, and I think he got exploited multiple times. And I think he's just kind of like that basketball. They wanted him to be Antonio Gates because he played basketball. You know, like, oh, he played basketball, he's just gonna be I think you were saying in your fantasy podcast this week how every year you draft Jimmy Graham thinking it's gonna be awesome, and then you regret it. So I thought
we were comparing him to the clap because it feels really good while you're doing it and while you're drafting Jimmy Graham because of the athleticism. And that's probably what they thought when they were signing Jimmy Graham. They're like, oh yeah, we're getting Jimmy Graham. This is gonna be a weapon for Aaron Rodgers. And now they're sitting at 4-6-1 and they got the clap.
That's why you leave your trash at the bar, brother. You don't bring trash home. But you know, I think that I thought it was crazy, actually. I thought Rodgers wasn't going to get an extension. I thought if I was Rodgers, the way that organization is built, I want to go to a better franchise. Like, I think he would go to, like, the Denver Broncos, like, gets with John Elway, like, do the Peyton Manning thing. I wouldn't hate that move. I mean, I haven't really overanalyzed this in my head about the other moves. Like, I would rather him be a Packer forever. But that also includes the Packers doing something about getting him a damn weapon. Like,
yeah, it's you in football is different than whenever a basketball player, and I'm still not against basketball players switching. KD's a bitch. We'll leave it at that. But it's
no
different
doubt,
whenever
big bitch,
whenever
big facts.
when you switch you know, if he were to switch and go play for Denver, yeah, they've won Super Bowls recently and they've won Super Bowls in the past, but it's because they do the right thing. They set up their defense, they set up their offensive line, and then they set up, you know, a couple of weapons, or they draft good weapons for you. I mean, Devontae Adams is good, but you need more than just Devontae Adams and Jimmy Graham. You got to have a running game. They don't rely on the running game anymore like they did whenever they were winning games. Like,
I thought they had a pretty mediocre offensive line, and then it all of a sudden got good again, and now it's mediocre again. And it's like, I still feel like Brian Beluga is still fucking blocking. Like, how is your line getting better if you don't change or do anything to change it? But who am I? I think that the Packers, if they could play themselves into being the organization that had one of the best players ever and couldn't win titles with them. Like, not as much, you know? I mean, Brett Favre was amazing. He slung the rock. He was very lucky he played in the era he was, because he was like a phenomenon more than anything. Like, no one saw what he would do and had the balls of what he does, but he'd probably be mediocre nowadays. He'd throw a lot of picks. Like, he probably wouldn't have a job after a couple years, the way that they recycle quarterbacks now. So him winning one title, it's like, you know, with Favre, he probably throws you out of some of your games, you know? So you expect him to throw you out just as much as you throw him in. And they had a title drought, so, like, I think Favre was like the guy who brought the titles back to Green Bay after, you know, they've been the storied franchise and had a couple decades of, you know, dismay and basically irrelevance. Like, he saved them. So if him having won, but like, they had a title in the last couple years, and now, like, with Rodgers, I think you expect to have to get at least 2 or 3 with him if you put any type of talent around him. I mean, his statistics are there. He definitely, I feel like, isn't as good of a game manager as people want to. People like to, like, say, oh, he makes the good calls to the line, he does all that, and I think he can. I just don't think he's humble enough, because he's so gifted that he's just like I've heard it. He just goes, I'm gonna run the play, and I'm so good, I'm gonna just make it, you know. And Tom Brady,
you can see that.
Yeah,
you can see that in some of his passes. He's just out there messing around, like throwing off his back foot, just doing stupid shit that you're just like, yeah, man, we know you can make those throws, but what's the point? Like you were about to bring up, Tom Brady doesn't have to make those throws. He outsmarts the defense and finds the open, and Edelman's good enough to find the soft spot in the zone. Like, it's basic. Like, they run the ball when they have to run the ball.
And you can see it. Even Rodgers, sometimes he runs the ball, but, like, he can do it. It's just, like, consistently, is he humble enough as a dude to maybe have 38 to 4,200 yards and always go 12-4, or does he always want to go for that 4,600 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, no interceptions, which he's still not throwing picks as, like, mediocre of a fantasy season he's having? He's not throwing any picks. I think he's thrown 1 pick. So
yeah, they're just punting a lot. They're punting the football.
Yeah, he's been my fantasy quarterback, complete letdown. Very sad. I thought off the injury he was going to, like, be like Big Dick Aaron, but no, he's fucking little ween, cry and complain about my teammates Aaron this year. And I don't know if you saw, I wanted to bring this up, you saw that thing that his brother said, that he never even called his mom to see if she was all right with those California wildfires. I'm not trying to like dig deep into that, you know, it's family drama. You never know what goes both ways in that situation.
That's been an ongoing thing that
he's been documented. His whole family does not mess with him. Like, I get it, your brothers and your sisters, you have fallen outs. You know, maybe I can understand that. You know, cousins and uncles, you don't see them a lot. You don't like them. I understand it completely. I promise you that. I'm just saying is, have your parents not mess with you and say it on like a national media level. It's kind of like the NFL kind of like, think about it. The NFL and everyone kind of just doesn't address it because he's like the golden boy. But I mean, I think he released like an ad saying like, you know, help people with the wildfires, all this stuff. And he didn't hit up his mom to make sure she was all right. And I'm not saying like maybe it's right or wrong, or, you know, I didn't go deep into the detail. I just kind of heard it at surface value, but it's very, I don't know. It kind of makes me think, you know, second, like, you know, is he willing to do what it takes to win, to be the Joe Montana and win 4 or 5 titles? I don't know. Like, is he more of a Dan Marino where, like, you know, yeah, he has a title which Dan doesn't, but he's probably just going to throw for 70,000 yards, have the craziest completion percentage. Like, you know, he'll still be a first ballot Hall of Famer, still arguably, some people still think he's the GOAT. because they're diluted. But that I think Green Bay has to really look in themselves is like, do we want to go 4-6 again with Aaron Rodgers? Because I don't think Aaron Rodgers looks that bad. I mean, he doesn't look good, and he definitely has been erratic with some of his decision making, and like his like consistency hasn't been there. I mean, he still isn't turning the ball over, which is good, but they're punting like you said. I just think it's more embarrassing the organization just time and time again to not be able like to keep players, sign players. For being the Packers, man, I just don't understand it. I think it's a little confusing to me.
Yeah, and while we're actually recording this, Deshaun Watson just ran for a nice like 15-yard touchdown to take the lead on the Titans. And someone who kind of reminds me a lot of Deshaun is Lamar Jackson. I know we wanted to bring him up.
Yes, I mean, for me, I mean he's like Michael Vick 2.0 possibly. So I'm just excited to have him on the field as a product for the NFL to have. Like, he's a star in the making. Like, if he can, if they can like get rid of Fluco. I totally agree with Skip Bayless on this. Fluco had his title. You got it out of him. I just don't think he's just not the new age quarterback you want. He's not even that accurate. Like, just get rid of him. You drafted and moved up for Lamar. I think if you could get Lamar comfortable, like, he's going to have to get through these like growing pains of being a young quarterback who's not like typically known as an accurate quarterback coming in the draft.
Sure, and so if you look at his stats, which I do want to note, he's had 2 wins in a row starting at quarterback. His stats they don't jump off the page as far as that goes, but I mean, how much better was Flacco at slinging the ball around? He wasn't doing that, nothing special.
No.
So why not just leave Lamar in? He iced the game with a 40-yard run on Sunday. He straight up iced the game with a 40-yard run.
I think he has that intangible. He's a winner, like from where he comes from, like and how he's always performed. He's a winner. Now, he's not ready to just dial it up from the pocket. I mean, he threw some atrocious throws. But if he could get it together, like if he could throw at a Cam Newton level, I mean, Jesus, like the ceiling for him, especially fantasy wise, is incredible. I mean, he through 2 games he's doing things rushing that no quarterback has ever done. And like you said, I think he's clutch enough that if he can not be RG3 and just go 100 miles an hour and get hurt, I think he could win you games. And he has, I think I heard, the number 1 defense in the league, which is the Baltimore Ravens. And Terrell Suggs looks hyped with him at quarterback. He was juking people running for returns. I think he brings that energy and spark you need. And there's definitely, I think Crabtree's like, Crabtree said that he's electrifying. And like the league doesn't even, like he said, like Michael Crabtree, I mean, he's a veteran. I mean, he's seen it. I think he could be a better version. I guess it's hard to I just think that he needs to iron out these games. He'll sell the tickets. I don't think the Ravens are going to win a Super Bowl even if they iron out a wild card. And now that they're competing for a wild card, you're going to put him in those situations. Like, even if he loses, like let's say he gets to a wild card game and loses in the playoffs, that's great experience for how young he is. Like, that's only great going forward. And then it gives you a good reason to reinforce starting him.
Yeah, we got to take into consideration this man's still a rookie. He's, halfway through the season coming in, stepping into a starting role. Raiders don't have the best defense. I'll be the first one to admit that. They got a pretty soft schedule coming up, though. These are perfect games to end the season. He's going to get you wins because he's not going to try and do too much, but he's going to do enough when he's running the ball. And let him build that confidence up, and you never know. He's hard to game plan around in the wild card. Maybe you get a wild card matchup and the defense is a little bit slower than some of the other wild card matchups and they can't contain him. Let him go on a little bit of a run right now. If he gets confidence going, he's the type of player, if he gets confidence, he's going to throw better. He's going to make those throws.
No, he gets that extra zip.
Yeah, he hit John Brown on a dime for a deep ball. It was one of those perfect throws. If you look back, Russell Wilson hit Tyler Lockett on a deep pass that put him in the field goal range. But if Russell Wilson would have hit him while he was still running in his route, it would have been a touchdown. Lamar Jackson hit John Brown on his route. There just happened to be a guy there to pick him up, but he hit him in his route right in the breadbasket, dropped it in there. It was a hell of a throw. If he's making throws like that, he's going to be hard to beat. So why not just let him build up the confidence and get better? And then I'd rather have him in the playoffs than Joe Flacco at this point, because you know what you get with Joe Flacco. You don't get a lot. Lamar Jackson, like you said, he's got a huge ceiling, really, really high.
Huge, man. Like, honestly, just thinking about it, and I think he looks good in the Ravens uniform. Like, the purple and black on him, like, he looks like a Baltimore fucking Raven. Like, I think he looks like Ray Lewis wants to go to war with him. Like, I remember the first game, I think it was national television against my Florida State Seminoles, another great moment in Noles history. Sorry, Noles fans, for bringing this up, but Lamar Jackson and the Louisville put like 60-70 on us, and he shouted out Kodak Black. He just like, free Kodak on national television. Like, right there alone, if he gets that swagger with him, I mean, he will run it down. He will kill you. He wants to kill you, and if he can get that confidence, he will.
Yep. No, the ceiling is the roof. In the great words of Michael Jordan, the ceiling is the roof with Lamar Jackson. He's going to only get better from this point on. So let him get those reps in, let him get that experience. You're not going to win a Super Bowl. You're not winning a Super Bowl this year. You got a good enough defense. Keep that defense together. Let Lamar get some good reps, good experience, and go after it next year.
So we were comparing Lamar with some quarterbacks and obviously Michael Vick, but when we talk about comparisons, we haven't dove into this, but we're gonna dive in some UFC. Anderson Silva is gonna come back to fight Israel Adesanya. I probably didn't say that last name right. I know one of my listeners is always gonna rip me apart for messing up the names, but a lot of my listeners who are on my Facebook page definitely liked and was interested in this post. So I mean, I know I'm excited just to see this fighter back in the ring, and Israel, the fighter that he's facing, I mean, he is like a carbon copy. I mean, he must have watched Anderson Silva as he was growing up and is like, I can do the same things. And some of the strikes he strike. I saw one strike. It's still like, it's just on my mind. He's like, has wrist control, and he does like an elbow with wrist control. Like, he fakes like a takedown, or he's gonna like rush the head, and he just elbows him in his face. And it like, just kind of like, he strikes in the way that Anderson Silva does, where he's like, he's not striking all the time, but when he strikes you, he hits you right in the face, hard, clean, doesn't put himself in bad positions. Like, it's crazy to see someone, and he does fun strikes. Like, the thing about Anderson Silva, he had the highest strike completion percentage in UFC history. I think it was like 75% strike completion, which is insane. Like, every 3 out of 4 strikes he has makes contact, but when he does it with like spinning back fists and knees. And I remember he made the front kick like basically famous with his front kick. I think it was to Thiago Silva. And
yeah, guys like Israel, they are products of watching Anderson Silva grow up, because when Anderson Silva came into the UFC, you had a lot of the guys like Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Matt Hughes, those guys that are old and shouldn't be fighting anymore. Shout out to Chuck Liddell for getting in the ring, because I think he just needed some money this weekend because he looked horrible.
He's hurt.
But you got guys like Anderson Silva, who he came in, he knew how to hit strikes, but he didn't go in there and just throw. He hit with precision. He'll go after the chin a lot. He goes after those quick body shots, things like that really add up and help you win fights. But now at that point, that's why you have guys like Israel coming in who know how to hit strike. They know how to strike, and they know how to grapple, and they know how to finish you with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the ground. So it's a combination, and they're kind of hybrid instead of just, I'm a grappler, or I used to wrestle, so I'm a grappler Jiu-Jitsu guy, and they don't really do stand-up, or vice versa. I don't know any BJJ. I'm all striking. Now you got the guys like Israel who can do it all, and that's when the UFC is going to, here in the really now to the upcoming next 1-2 years, this is when the UFC is going to get fun, because you're going to have guys in there playing a lot of mind games, trying to figure out, what are some weak spots, where can I get these guys at, because everyone's going to know ground defense, everyone's going to know takedown defense, and everybody's going to be able to strike with that as well, and it's going to be awesome to see.
And I think too, for me, the best fights are the fights with like an Anderson Silva, where like he's striking, but he could go and tap you out if he needs to. So it's like, it's not like a fight that like because they're striking, it's because no one has ground game, or they're on the ground because one dude's so weak. Like they're gonna both have ground game, striking. So there's nothing that they could like with the Conor McGregor fight. I thought it was a horrible matchup, especially coming off the break that he had, because he just doesn't match up on the ground well. So like no matter how good you are at striking, it doesn't matter if you're exhausted and you just wrestle fucking you. So I think with this fight, it's great that we have a good matchup. Maybe Anderson Silva is old and does the Chuck Liddell thing, but I hope it does, and I hope it's a good fight because I don't want to see Israel hurt Anderson Silva bad. I think he would have a Ronda, like I don't want him to go out in a weird way for being basically, maybe in my opinion, probably definitely arguably the GOAT.
Yeah, honestly, when you look at it though, Chuck Liddell in his last few fights before this past weekend, guys that go in there and they just trade punches, they don't last very long. I mean, he had a good career, but you could see toward his last 3-4 fights that just he had gotten hit way too many times, and it wasn't there anymore. The toughness wasn't there. The ability to take shots like he used to was not there. Anderson Silva, if you go back and look at his fights, even before he stopped fighting, he didn't ever lose fights due to that. I mean, he got knocked out.
It was the injury too, and then he had this leg snap, which like he could
exactly. Yeah. So I think, with that being said, it goes along with your point of he's not going to come out and not put on a show. He's going to be ready.
I'm excited. I really hope he's in some good shape, man, because that UFC card with Conor McGregor was super exciting. I think that the UFC is going to continue to grow. I think it's just such an awesome product. I know me and you both are into the fighting styles and that type of stuff, so I know we're both jacked up about it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. You got Anderson Silva. Like I said, I don't think that he is the type of guy who's going to step into the ring. I don't think he needs money like Liddell. You could tell Liddell was just getting in there because he needed some money, and it's laughable that that he even got into the ring again. But I'm excited about this one. I wasn't excited. I barely even watched the Liddell fight.
I did not watch that. I'm not entertaining that bullshit, that cash grab. Floyd Money Liddell. But honestly, that's about it. I think this wraps up this podcast. Honestly, another great recording. Obviously, I love talking sports with you, brother, and I hope we can keep having you on. I know a lot of our listeners think you're funny and think you have good knowledge, and I know some of them have been even taking your tips on your fantasy page, and it's been helping them close, like finishing off in the playoffs. So I think I'm excited to have you on in the future.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And guys, if you ever have any fantasy questions, you can always contact me on our Twitter, which is just HOF Fantasy. And you can reach out that way. You can DM me. Hit up Ryan for contact info. I don't care to help out at all and help you set some lineups. I'm pretty good setting other people's lineups, but when I set my own, I sometimes don't take my own advice. So that's neither here nor there. Thanks for having me on the show again, man. I'm glad to do the second episode with you, and for you to have me on.
No problem, man. Honestly, I have a blast doing it, and I know some of our listeners, like, you've listened, but make sure, even if you do listen, if you could like me on Facebook, follow the Instagram. It's all King Sportscast. I've been having a blast doing this, helping you guys with any information we could have, and want to keep it going, and definitely need your support, and we will see you next time on King Sportscast. Da, 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 da.
See